Hello, everyone. So I thought I'd do a little review here, or maybe rather big, depending on how it goes. But there's a few things I'd like to talk about, and I've wanted to talk about RPGs for a while now. I mean, I have been talking about RPGs, but uh, I don't think anyone um, ever really paid much attention to what I had to say. So there's that. But there's I've lately taken an interest in OSR games, particularly, and obviously I've been looking into a lot of them because once you once you enter the rabbit hole, there's there's hardly any stopping. So it's kind of it's tough to find something you like without spending too much money on a bunch of stuff that you don't need, stuff like that. So, but there's a few that I've been interested in. Limitations of the Flame Princess is one in particular that's very popular, obviously, and that I really enjoy because I like the feel of it, the setting, the assumed setting, as well as the modules and stuff that they release for it. OSE I've considered, but the problem is that it's hard to get where I live here in Europe. Lamentations is a lot easier because James Edward Reggie the Fourth is actually located in Europe, so their EU store seems to be better stocked than their US store most of the time. So that makes it a lot easier for me, as well as I'm also able to get their stuff on eBay, on Amazon, sorry, as well as on certain German websites and stuff like that, web stores. OSE, on the other hand, is an expensive prospect. I can only get their stuff at a couple of UK stores, as well as on Exalted Funeral and stuff like that, which is located in the US. So the shipping is going to be expensive and stuff. So OSE is unfortunately not for me. I'm a big fan of Sword and Wizardry. I've the print on demand book. The free PDF is no longer available, which is very weird because they released the book, the box set now, with the book divided in three parts, and that's very expensive and completely superfluous. Well, so but I still had the PDF, so I just had it printed. I got a very nice custom print at the local print shop. It's soft cover. It's not like the original hardcover version, but it actually looks really nice if you look here. So it's actually very nice. I'm very happy with this book. Um, Lion and Dragon is another one that I enjoy, right? Um, and stuff like that. But I haven't really decided on what to run yet. Yet, I'm still tending towards Lamentations and the new one that I just got, Blood and Treasure. Right. So I got this from Lulu.com. It's and I got all the books. It's by John M. Stater. Very good writer, very productive. I got all of them. I got the Monsters book, the core rule book, the second Monsters book. Here it is, and Esoteric Exhumed, which is basically his Arcana Unearthed. So this is the game I want to review today, Blood and Treasure. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because hardly ever anyone does. It seems to be completely forgotten. This is the second edition, as you can see. It says so right here, second edition. I have the PDF for the first one as well. You can get the first edition for free on DriveThruRPG. Um, the second edition will set you back for like I think it's about $10. The hardcovers though are about $20 each on Lulu.com. They're not very expensive. Like for the 4 books, I paid as much as I would pay for like maybe the core book and a monster manual in any other system. Obviously, it's a print-on-demand book, so wait, let me show you. So the paper quality with Lulu.com for black and white, print-on-demand, non-deluxe paper and stuff isn't all that crazy great. Isn't amazing, but it's definitely serviceable, and it's still hardcover. It's still very resilient, I guess you could say. It's still pretty good quality. I mean, obviously the typography and the art inside isn't anything mind blowing, so it doesn't need to have like deluxe paper or whatever. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. But the book itself, the rules are super solid, and that's why I want to talk about them now. So in order to do this, to give you a better idea, I will actually open up the PDFs here, right? Let me just find them, and I'll switch screens. So we've got the rulebook. Let's start with the basics. So I'm not gonna spoil anything. I'm not gonna get into too much detail, but I just wanna, let me see, is it working? Yeah. I just wanna get through some of the stuff that really caught my eye with this thing. Obviously, the cover art is really nice. It's a bit more of a comic style than I'm normally used to, but it looks really nice. And there's some art inside that is very good as well. So to give you an idea of what this game is, obviously it goes through the basics and everything. But it's kind of a combination of basic D&D, and I think, if I remember correctly, John M. Stater has stated that it's based on Sword and Wizardry, so it's got a few ideas from there. But it incorporates ideas from AD&D as well, first edition if I'm not mistaken, and third edition. So it's a little bit more modern than your run-of-the-mill OSR game, which I personally like to some degree. Because I'm kind of on the fence on whether I want to go real old school, or whether I want to incorporate some more modern features from third edition and Pathfinder. So I'm definitely thinking about running this game at some point. But it's got all the third edition tropes in there as well as the OSR tropes, let's say, or the basic D&D. So it starts out, obviously, it's got your usual fare of like rolling up your character. Obviously, he isn't Mr. Stater isn't as absolutist, let's say, with rolling up your character as OSE or the OSR in general is, where they're like roll 3d6 down the line and what you've got is what you got. He's a bit more modern again. He does allow ability scores over 18, right? So there's playable races. They'll give you a bonus to something. You might get up to 19, I think, because most of them are +1, -1. So it's all within reason, let's say. So he's got modifiers for up to an ability score of 20, right? And obviously he says, if you want, you can roll 46, 4 6-sided dice, drop the lowest value and add the remaining dice together. You can assign each score to the ability you wish. Obviously, look, these things, personally, I don't mind. No game can control how the GM decides, or the TK as he's called here, the treasure keeper, how he decides to have players create their characters, right? I mean, you could play an OSR game, you could play old school Essentials, and tell the players to roll 46, drop the lowest value, and assign the scores as they see fit. Nobody cares, right? So the whole pretentiousness around having to roll 3d6 down the line, I mean, it's fun. You could try it for a game, but not every DM is going to like that. Not every player is going to enjoy that. So it's a suggestion. It's not a rule. It's not a hard and fast rule. And that's what this game acknowledges, so I appreciate that. There's a few other things. Let's see. It explains the abilities, nothing special here. So then it goes over to the races, right? So we have your usual fare of fantasy races. Let me zoom in again. This is kind of annoying. So you got your humans. You got a nice picture here to get an idea of the size differences. You've got your 3rd edition races, basically, right? Humans, dwarves, elves, gnomes, half elves, half orcs, halflings, and that is what it starts out with. But the game actually, and I'll get to that later on, in the monster books, it also includes passages on how to play certain races as a player character, right? So there are your usual sub races. Like the Drow and the Dwergar and the Svirfneblin or whatever. Those are detailed in the monster books. And it gives you rules for playing them as characters. They're your plain touched, the Aasimar, the Tieflings or whatever. Those are also included. And then you have Esoterica Exhumed, which includes a bunch of more playable races that, as far as I've seen, aren't included in the monster books, but we'll get to those when we get to them. I don't know if I'm gonna do this in this video. I might break it up into parts and go through the books one by one, but we'll get to them. So then we have the character classes, and these are a bit more interesting. Right, they're not just your. They do include your 3rd edition fare, but it's not limited to them. So you've got your barbarian, bard, cleric, druid, fighter, magic user, monk, paladin, ranger, sorcerer, and thief, and you've got your assassin and your duelist. Those I think are originally prestige classes from D&D. They're included here as standalone classes. So I think the Assassin was inspired by Swords and Wizardry as well. And Duelist is separate. So now we get to the meat of the thing. You'll notice a few things here. Okay, it includes the titles. Okay, big deal. Each class has its own selection of skills. So if we look at it at the Assassin here, it says climb walls, disguise, forgery, hear noise, hide in shadows, move silently, open locks, read languages, etc. Right? Every class has a selection of skills, specific skills for that class, and some obviously may overlap with other classes, but they only have those. You don't actually allocate points to the skills, like in 3rd edition. So you don't actually select skills outside of their class. They just level up parallel to your own player level, right? So you start out at +1 on your skills, and as you level up, go +2, +3, +4, etc. Very simple. It makes a lot of sense to me because, in 3rd edition, most characters would basically limit themselves to a couple of class skills and just level those up every level. So there's no need to actually try and make a distinction between class skills and non-class skills. You just have what you have based on your class, and you level that up accordingly. It also includes rules for each class. For a stronghold at level 9, as does Swords and Wizardry. At level 9, the Barbarian, for example, gets to build a hill fort. The assassin gets to build a assassin's guild or whatever. That's the so the thief has the thieves guild, obviously. Assassin order, okay, big deal, okay. And so on. So you attract followers and whatnot, and so that's you can do all that stuff, which is cool. And obviously you've got the ranks, the titles that you get based on your level. So those are a fun thing. I don't like all of them. For example, I don't see how a bard can go from a minstrel to a skald when a skald is a different type of bard than a minstrel or a poet. Well, okay, they're both poets, let's say, but or jongleur, rhymer. I don't know. It's just kind of stupid. In fact, bards are basically apprentice druids normally, but let's not get started on that. But, anyway, clerics, range. So there's a few. There's a few cool ideas here. You've got some archetypes as well. So for the cleric, for example, you got a few based on like in other games you select your deity. Here it's basically you select a cult and it gives you some special spells. Okay, so there's one more thing I need to cover before we proceed to another detail. So first of all, you only have one saving throw, right? So each level has a different saving throw progression. Each class, has a different saving throw progression, which I think is kind of stupid based on the fact that it's only one saving throw, because it's kind of unfair having one class have different saving throws than another if it's only one of them. I would have preferred, so in first edition, and I should open that up to compare. In first edition you had the third edition, so in the first edition of Blood and Treasure you had the saving throws of third edition D&D, right? So you had fortitude, reflex and will. That made a little bit more sense, because you level those up depending on your class, and it feels more appropriate a little bit. The saving throw in second edition seems similar to Swords and Wizardry, but it's a little bit more. It doesn't actually include the bonuses you get in Swords and Wizardry, which kind of bums me out. Like in Swords and Wizardry, at least, you had one saving throw, but if you were a wizard, you had a bonus to saving throws against magic and stuff like that. The only exception being the fighter, who didn't have any bonuses, but their average saving throw was a bit higher than other classes. So it had a balance in that regard. Here it's a bit. I need to look it up. Let me see if there's any information about the saving throws, but it doesn't actually. It doesn't actually have any bonuses based on their class, which is a shame, honestly. So I would, if I'm gonna play second edition, I'll probably port some ideas from Swords and Wizardry into this game. That's one thing. The other thing that I wanted to show you, that I really appreciate about this book, is let's go to the magic user, right? So as you can see in the annotations here, the spell list for the magic user is included in the class section of the class, which I think is very, very practical, right? You could print out those pages, give them to your magic user player, so that he has an overview of all his spells, and doesn't need to open the book, go through the magic section, look up which spells are the magic user wants, and then start looking through them alphabetically to find the spell that he's looking for, right? This is very cool, and I think the druid and the druid has the same, and the cleric has the same. The sorcerer just uses the magic user spell list, so he doesn't have his own list, but that's fine. I think this is a really cool feature that more books should have, just for convenience sake. We've got the monk. There's a variation for the monk, the ninja, stuff like that. There's a few abilities. So every class obviously has some abilities as well, which are cool and all. But I kind of wish that they were included in the list in the advancement table as well. Just like they were in 3rd edition, because it's kind of confusing to have them all separately here. At 2nd level, deflect arrows. At 4th level, this and that. I wish it was in the advancement table, but it's nothing. It's nothing serious. It's just kind of weird that he included the spell list in the class section, but didn't include the abilities in the advancement table. But okay, that's just me. You can multi-class, you can dual class, so that's also cool. There are separate rules for multi-classing and dual classing, so it does actually import those features from AD&D to give it a little bit more flavor. And I think, so dual classing is available for humans, half-elves and half-orcs, and multi-classing is available for all the other races. And depending on what race you are, you can multi-class certain characters, certain classes, I think. Although I'm not sure, it might actually. Multi-class character must earn XP equal to the XP requirements. Blah de blah. It doesn't actually seem to restrict any classes. Let me see. It might actually say something for the races themselves. Let's look at the elf here. Elves and magic resistance 90%. Okay, it does. Elf magic users can multi-class as clerics, fighters, and thieves. And truly extraordinary elves can multi-class as fighter, magic users, thieves. So, so they can multi-class certain classes, but other than that, they can select any other class, right? So if you want to play a single class, you can pick any class you like. So you can play an elf paladin, you can play an elf monk or dwarf monk, whatever. But you can't multi-class them, which I think is reasonable. I think that's actually a very elegant solution to both retain like the OSR flavor for those races, as well as give them a bit more of the 3rd edition flexibility to allow them to pick any class they like. So that's really cool, I think. Dual classing works like multi-classing in 3rd edition, so as a human you can pick a different class. Okay, no, there are some rules for that. Achieving at least 3rd level, dual class character, restriction, okay. So, and they have to keep in mind the restrictions of their 2nd class and everything like that. And they keep all their abilities, but they gain special abilities in new classes they advance in levels. So basically, you can only do it once. You can't switch back and forth from your 2 classes. So okay, that's the classes. The alignments include both the single axis as well as the double axis alignment system, which is kind of hokey in this game, because obviously law is interpreted as good. So if you're playing only the triple alignment system, law is good, neutral is neutral, chaos is evil. While if you're playing the 9-fold alignment system, law becomes law, and then good becomes good, so you have lawful good, neutral good, etc. What I do like about the alignment system here is how in the ninefold system it makes a distinction between neutral and true neutral. That is very cool. So neutral is basically pragmatic, not too good, not too evil. This probably includes animals and stuff that don't actually think about alignment. And true neutral is someone who's actually devoted to neutrality, someone who's trying to maintain balance between law and chaos and good and evil. So I think that's a nice touch. So it's actually a 10-fold alignment system, which is nice. It's a detail I hadn't thought about. And you can select your heritage. Those give you some extra skills. So that's also very nice. That gives you a secondary skill to add to your normal class skills. So that way you do have an avenue to use non-class skills, to use something different from what you would normally have. So that's nice. You can be, you can be a slave, a serf, a villain, a yeoman, a burgher, a gentry, or a noble, right? So that's pretty nice. I think that's a very cool touch, and you can even select a profession. Oh, you can you roll your secondary skill. Ah, okay, those are separate. I hadn't noticed that. Okay, next we have equipment, and this personally, just because of my own bias, is my favorite chapter in this book, because he goes into so much detail about the kind of weapons and armor and stuff you can have. This is something I've been looking for in OSR games and in D&D stuff in general, because I'm a sucker for medieval weaponry. I practice a little bit of HEMA. I'm actually a fencer, so I mostly do Olympic fencing, so I do AP. But I've done a little bit of HEMA as well. I like weapons. I like swords, especially, and I like making correct distinctions between all the different kind of swords, right? So I very much appreciated this part, but I have to say the first edition did it better, in my opinion. In some regards, at least. Let me just see if I can find it now, because I'm still looking for that thing. Blood and Treasure complete. There you go. So if you look at this, it doesn't actually have the. Okay, that's a bit of an issue. Let me look at the pages here. So that's equipment. It's on page 32. Oh, that's not page 32. Gotta be fucking kidding me. Alright, 32. Okay, so first of all, you got awesome pictures in this one. I mean, they're not, obviously they're just black and white silhouettes. I miss those. I would like to have those in the second edition book as well. And secondly, okay, the lists are a bit smaller, a bit harder to see, harder to read here, but that's not a big deal. They're a bit more generic, but I think they're a bit more realistic as well, except for the rapier. So the rapier was done best in Lamentations of the Flame Princess. It has the rapier do 1d8 damage. I love that. Because the rapier, if it actually hits, does a ton of damage because it's a piercing weapon. Obviously, in Lamentations, it also has a penalty for hitting armored targets, right? So that balances it out somewhat. Here it just does 1d6 damage as it did in 3rd edition, which is it's a shame. But on the other hand, the scimitar does 1d8 rather than 1d6, which I also hated with 3rd edition, because the scimitar is a hefty weapon. It does not do 1d6 damage. And my favorite of all, let me see, where is it? It's not the falchion. It should be the falchion, but it's not. The broadsword, here. The broadsword does 2d4 damage. The broadsword, to clarify, is a fairly short sword, right? But it's very heavy. It's usually straight. It can be curved. The cutlass falls under the broadsword category in this game, which is correct. The cutlass, the falchion, which is here separately, but okay, let's ignore that. The schavona, the the messer. The messer falls under the broadsword category, or the broadsword falls under the messer category, whichever way you want to look at it. The broadsword is a heavy, short blade. The clue is, usually those swords, the cutlass, the messer, etc., are big knives. They're actually heavier than most swords. They just have shorter range. They're pretty sharp, but they're very savage weapons, right? They're closer to an axe than a sword in terms of momentum and sheer cutting power. So 2d4 is a very, very accurate representation of this type of blade, right? So in the second edition, just needless to say, the cutlass is my favorite weapon. That's my weapon of choice in HEMA. I practice the Dusak. Right, the Dusak also falls under that category. Here, if you look at the broadsword, it does 1d6 plus 1. And he has actually separated it from the cutlass, if I'm not mistaken. Where is it? Cutlass should be somewhere here. Unless he hasn't. I seem to remember that he had put it separately here. Sword short. Ah, yeah. So here, the cutlass is under short sword, right? Which is more or less accurate, but I do think the cutlass is a bit longer than what we imagine as a short sword, right? It doesn't include the messer, but that's okay. I can live with that. But what I do like is that it still does the same amount of damage as the broadsword, 1d6 plus 1. And I do like that. I do still understand and respect the fact that it does a minimum of 2 with 1d6 plus 1. I just prefer the 2d4. I very much prefer the 2d4, and obviously when I'm going to start playing the game, I will port the weapon damages from the first edition, because that makes a lot more sense to me. Other than that, the amount of detail and just stuff in here, he has increased the damage for the rapier now that I look at it. 1d6 plus 1 is not bad at all. The other thing, though, what he did do wrong, in my opinion, the rapier category also includes the medieval arming sword and the later side sword and small sword. So the arming sword and side sword I can understand, even though what we call the what we call the longsword is actually the arming sword, right? The arming sword is a one-handed weapon. The longsword is a two-handed sword. So that's already... So the arming sword should be in the place of the longsword, and the longsword should be in the category of the bastard sword, if anything. Otherwise, it should be a two-handed sword or a great sword, and then you have a category larger, which is the Zweihander. Regardless, the rapier, the small sword, however, on the other hand, is not a rapier. The small sword is a good deal smaller than a rapier. It doesn't do the same amount of damage. It's narrower as well, so it pokes a smaller hole. So that's not gonna gel for me. The small sword needs to be a category of its own, or it should be included under the short sword category, maybe. And it should do 1d6 damage, or maybe... Why did he turn the... Oh, this is just... Okay, so I don't know. So I don't know what went on with the weapons. So this category, even though I like the amount, the fact that he covers all these weapons, I'm kind of disturbed by the damage system he seems to have employed now. And I think it was an attempt to kind of balance some things out, but I don't think that's necessary, because this game is pretty high power compared to other OSR games. I think he can afford to have some high-end weapons in there. So this doesn't make sense to me. I don't see why the scimitar suddenly, even though it was correct in the first book, now suddenly does 1d6 damage again, stuff like that. So some of that stuff doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, regardless, the equipment part is very good. It includes all the firearms as well, which I enjoy. Arquebuses, handguns, muskets, and pistols. Very good selection there. It includes some nice rules for shields and stuff, spiked shields, lock gauntlets, which is pretty cool. Bucklers and stuff like that. The armor is your standard fare. There's really not much to say about that. It's basically the armor set from 3rd edition, which I find kind of a bummer. I think it would be more interesting to make it a bit more historically accurate, because you did all that trouble with all the weapons and stuff, but we're still stuck with stuff that doesn't really, there's no brigandines, there's no, I don't know, it's kind of weird. I think you could have done better there, but anyway, so equipment is all nice. There's a few optional rules. There's feats. Oh yeah, I skipped over the feats entirely. Let me just look at those with you guys. So feats, optional rules. There is a small selection of feats. It's nothing like in 3rd edition. But if you're not gonna go all out with them, I don't really see a reason why you'd include, like, what is it? Maybe 24 of them. You're gonna start getting overlaps between classes having all these feats and stuff between characters. So I'd probably not bother with them. There's an alternative rule in Esoteric Exhumed we'll get to later on, which is much more interesting. You've got a weapon proficiency rule, which I think is much more interesting than the feats. Let's see, what else do we have? So then we get the rules of play. Obviously, I'm going to skim through those because most of us already know how D&D is played. So I'm not going to get into too much detail here. Obviously, there's stuff for time management, dungeon movement, wilderness movement, encumbrance. Encumbrance is, your standard fare. Based on strength, and it's all in pounds and stuff like that. So I honestly think I prefer Lamentations encumbrance system over this. Although I think I would combine it. I would do it based on strength rather than based on a standard number. But yeah, it's what it is. I mean, you can work with it. It's not too bad. Let me actually see where am I actually looking, because I'm losing track of where I'm going. Evading monsters, disease, starvation, and thirst. So that's all included. That's all fairly run of the mill. And then we got our class skill. Then we got skill checks. So those are interesting. Here's how they work. It's similar to Lamentations. Basically, from you roll on a 1d6. Surprises as well, the same thing. But it's got a system here. So 1 to 2 is 1 to 2 on 1d6, 3 to 6 is 1 to 3 on 1d6, etc. And then once you reach the high levels, it goes from 1 to 7 to on a 1d8. So it kind of raises the bar a little bit. It's a strange system. well, 1 to 7 on a 1d8 is pretty good. So I understand there needing to be like still a margin of failure. But yeah, so that's all decent. I actually honestly kind of prefer a D20 skill system, like in 3rd edition, and I would just have it kind of stack. But on the other hand, obviously having plus 20 on your D20 roll is kind of stupid, especially if you're going to include an ability modifier to that. So I'm not faulting him. I need to playtest this because I'm not sure if I like it or not. I'm not sure if I like 1d6 skill systems in general. Alright, I'm not sure I like Lamentations system either, but that's just me. Surprise is like on like with the skills, and obviously if you're playing a ranger or a barbarian and stuff, there's a lower score. There's a lower chance of being surprised at all, if at all. They need to roll a 1 basically to surprise you, so that's cool. Initiative is also on a 1d6. Morale checks are it's a saving throw. So morale checks are a saving throw. So that's cool. That's okay. And then there's this thing about there's special maneuvers and stuff. You can do those as well. Those are inspired by 3rd edition, which is cool. I enjoy those. Is there anything about parry? There's not really much about parry. My cat's looking for attention. Your usual turn undead thingy-majig table. Where was the part about saving throws? There it is. Okay, let's go here. So saving throws, I still don't understand. It's very generic. It says it's on a d20. You basically need to roll above your class saving throw that you have on your given level. And you need to add any relevant ability modifiers to your die check. But it nowhere anywhere in the book, neither for spells nor for other effects, does it actually say what kind of what modifiers you need to include. Obviously, I think that's a thing that you should rule as a GM. So, for example, if you're trying to avoid a trap, you roll a saving throw plus your dexterity modifier because it's kind of a reflex thing. And you need to beat your saving throw stat. Which, okay, I guess. I guess it works. I don't know. I'm not... The thing is, I find it kind of counterintuitive why the difficulty check, the target number, is the stat you have as your class. I would much rather have a saving throw bonus given by your class, like it was in 1st edition Blood and Treasure or 3rd edition D&D, or actually 5th edition D&D. If I'm completely honest, I actually like the saving throw system in 5th edition, right, where it's based on your abilities. And if you need to do a charisma saving throw, you do a charisma saving throw, even though I had never heard of that before. It makes sense that it might exist if someone's trying to charm you or whatever. I don't know. Or if you need to roll a Constitution saving throw, you roll Constitution saving throw, and so on. So that makes perfect sense to me. This way, you need to beat a number that is defined by you, and not by the trap you're trying to avoid, not by external circumstances, not by the spell you're trying to resist, all that kind of stuff. So that makes me kind of apprehensive. Obviously, it says saving throws against death, paralysis, disintegration, petrification, etc. are made a +3 bonus to the saving throw. He should say +3 penalty, because what he means is a +3 to the target number, not to your die check, right? So you have, it's harder to beat. That's what I make of it, but it doesn't specify. So you're kind of sat there trying to figure out what that means. Saving throw against spells is at a +1 bonus. Spellcasters and magic user using monsters enjoy an extra +1 bonus to save against magic spells, in addition to their bonus against spells from magic items. Wait, so they do have a bonus? Wait, what? Okay, so now I need to check the magic user, because again, this is all very unclear, because I'm not sure. Basically, personally, I would rule as a GM that the +3 bonus that is mentioned here means because this is against death, paralysis, disintegration, petrification, and being polymorphed. So those are very serious repercussions. So those are very hard to resist as well, right? So you have to roll your saving throw at a +3. So actually what that means is you get a -3 to your die roll, or an equivalent. So you need to roll 3 higher than you would normally have to roll. Okay. So again, if we go to the magic user, I don't seem to remember them having any. A magic user casts spells from magic user can cast His base date is okay. There's no limit to the number of spells magic user can know. Advanced spells can be found, for example, blah blah. But it doesn't actually say anything about their saving throws. Wait, bonus? Is that it? Maybe. That could be it. That could be it. As they advance in level and research new spells, you come across tidbits of knowledge. Duplicators rolled, roll again. Okay. Wizard towers, specialist mages. It doesn't actually say. It only says abilities. It doesn't say anything about. It doesn't say anything about a spell bonus. I would still implement it. I would probably import those things from Swords and Sorcery, but it seems like a pretty big oversight, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I would, I'll port those things when I play this game, if and when. So anyway, that's that. Rules of play. Surprise combat. Okay, what I do very much like about this game, about this chapter, about the rules, is the strongholds and domains. Okay, those are fairly run-of-the-mill. Obviously, at level 9, you get to build your strongholds. You need to invest a bunch of money to do that. So usually not every player will do that. You'll probably have to decide or they'll probably have to decide amongst each other who is going to have the stronghold and who's going to be like an advisor or whatever. Because there's only so much money you can carry around. But the chapter on mass combat is very cool. It's got a very, very nice simplified system of how to create an army based on squadrons. I would have called them something different because a squadron, when I think of squadrons, I think of jet fighters and stuff like that. So the kind of, I don't know, just a niggle on my part. Leader types obviously are going to play on their own, have their own special rules, so that's all fine. Mounted squadrons. You can put them together as well to form companies. All pretty cool. And basically they have, based on the total number of hit die they have, or the average number of hit die they have a number of hit points. Very simple, very cool. So you can basically play your squadrons as if they were one character in in a larger battlefield, and have them go against each other. And you can do mass combat that way. Naval combat is similar. I haven't gotten too much into that, but those rules are included as well. Siege siege engines and stuff as well. That's all really cool. Very cool damage specs as well. So that section of the book seems very useful and very cool. So nothing wrong with that. The spells are your standard D&D fare. Obviously, this game is very much D&D. It doesn't, Mr. Stater doesn't really cut any corners. Most of the stuff is fairly run-of-the-mill D&D, kind of like basic fantasy RPG is. So he doesn't have any scruples using monsters like aboleths and mind flayers and stuff like that. Those are all included in his monster books and stuff. So the same with the spells. Those are fairly run-of-the-mill. I haven't noticed anything different yet. I mean, some stuff might be new that I haven't noticed yet, but spells generally, magic users and spellcasting characters aren't really my forte, so I'm not really good at remembering all the spells and stuff. I know I need to learn them, but obviously that's why I like the section in the magic user and in the classes, where it actually lists out the spells per class in one go, so you don't have to look them up separately. Or to make it easier to look them up separately, let's say. So I hope that helps to get through this section easier. And then you have the GM advice section. Now, if you're not a GM, feel free to stop watching here. But I found this section to be the most interesting and absolutely this is super cool. Like I've read GM books and stuff as well. With other games. I've read the 5th edition one. I've read Lamentations one. I've read a few others. I've read the Swords and Sorcery one as well. Swords and Wizardry. I mean, sorry. Stuff like that, but none of them really pulled me in. This one actually goes into a lot of detail about designing dungeons, and has tables for random rooms, has details and stats for secret doors, traps, other stuff like statues, pedestals, pools, teleporters, you name it, cave-ins. I think those are traps. But anyway, it's got a lot of detail. Here's the traps. Okay, so it's got a lot of detail in that regard, but it's all explained very succinctly and neatly. Plus, it's got the random tables for a lot of that stuff. So you can just roll stuff up and make some stuff up on the fly, which I think is really nice. And same for the wilderness gameplay. So that's all very, very cool, very useful. It's got a section on treasure, obviously, with a lot of random tables, magic items, stuff like that, and a bunch of appendixes. The appendix includes an inspiration section, as is tradition with these books. It's got a few, it's got your standard fare. I think it's a bit shorter than Appendix N from D&D and Dungeon Crawl Classics and stuff like that, but it's pretty cool. But it's also got got artists and bloggers. I looked at this section. There's a few cool ones here that I actually happen to know. So it actually includes Zach Smith's playing D&D with porn stars, which is kind of funny because this book was released in 2016. So that's before all the controversy around Zach Smith. Personally, I don't care. I think Zach Smith, I like his content, so I don't really care what people think about him. And I obviously don't blame Mr. Stater for including him in there. There's a couple others. Tavern as well, whom I've been watching on YouTube as well. So that's all really cool. Some rules on conversion, and all that stuff, and you got your character sheet. Now, the character sheet is easily the least interesting part about this from this book. I think it needs a redesign. It's kind of boring, but it's not, it's serviceable. I would probably redo it, or maybe do it on like paper by hand. So that's the core rule book. As you can see, it's not without its flaws. There's definitely some issues here and there with some things. Some are, are down to taste. My taste just kind of wants other things, and that's kind of the reason why I'm still hung up on Lamentations. I actually kind of want to play Lamentations a little bit more than this. But obviously none of that is, you can fix any and all of those issues easily. None of them are serious issues. To recapitulate, my issues with the game are the saving throws. Those are the biggest issue, I think. The equipment list, and again, the equipment list isn't a big issue, and maybe the skills. But I haven't decided if I like the D6 system or not. Other than that, the game is basically. Is there anything else I'm missing? There's nothing. I don't think there's anything else. The saving throws really are the only thing that are holding this game back for me. But other than that, it's a phenomenal little package. Especially if you take into account the monster books as well. So I'm gonna skim through those a little bit. How long have we been going? Do we still have any time? I've been going for. Let me check. I've been going for an hour. So let me just. It's a bit long, but let me just go through a few of these, right? No, let me just leave this open. Open up the monster book. You know what? Nah. Oh wait, no, that's the old one. The monster book. This is the rule book. This is the monster book. Okay, so the monster book is really cool. It's got a lot of monsters. I'm not gonna go into any detail here, but there's a few things. There's a couple of things I wanted to show you. Actually, there's just one thing. Let me see if I can find it. I'll probably have to look. Let me see if I can find it. So, challenge 4. There's this really cool thing in this particular book. It's actually got many mini adventures. It's got like 4 of them for different levels. It's got one for first level. It's got one for 3rd level, I think, for 5th and for 9th. These are amazing. Like this little thing, just having. I don't know. I just love this idea because you can run them anytime. You can add them as a random encounter on your hex scroll. Just amazing. I wish there was more of them, actually, or a whole book of them. But obviously, Mr. Stater also runs his World of Nod, a zine, and all that stuff. So. Take that for what you will. There's a couple of issues of those that are free. The rest you need to pay like $3.50 for or something like that. So there's a lot more content where that came from. As I said, Mr. Stater is very productive as a prolific writer. So yeah. That's as far as the monster book goes. And then, since I'm already... oh, what happens? Something got disconnected there. Let me see if everything is alright. Yep, everything's alright. Alright, it didn't get interrupted. Okay. Let me just show you. I think no. The thing is, Arcana, Esoterica Exhumed is a special book on its own. I think that's going to need its own review, which I'll release maybe next week or something, whenever I feel like it. But Esoterica is Exhumed really is something else. That merits its own video. And maybe we'll do the master books as well, but I just wanted to give you guys an introduction to Blood and Treasure, which I think is woefully underrated. Nobody talks about it. It's a great OSR game. I think it's a very cool alternative to Old School Essentials, to Labyrinth Lords, to all these games. It's a very strong contender, in my opinion, to an easy to run retro clone, basically. I mean, it's more than a retro clone. That's the thing. It's a little bit more. It adds a few elements from third edition. It adds a few. It adds some more flavor. It's got its own thing going, and I really appreciate that. It's got a bit more of that comic book style. You know, if you look at this barbarian here, I really like her. I really like that the little character art here, even though it's not perfect, but it's definitely. Look at the ranger. I like it. I really like him. Here you go. With his pistol. I wish he had a cutlass instead of a dagger, because that's what a ranger would have, and a crossbow instead of the pistol. But I really like. But that's just me. If I want to do that, I'll make my own character. But yeah, guys. Show this man some love. Get the books from lulu.com. Get them from Drive to RPG. Get the PDFs if you prefer. You can't go wrong. Like if you're looking for an alternative to the OSR, to your generic BNX fare. Look, especially if you're a fan of third edition or Pathfinder, but you're looking for something a bit more toned down, bit easier, and a bit how do you say, a bit more flavorful, I would say, because I do think there's an implied kind of setting in Blood and Treasure, right? It feels very much like a swashbuckling buccaneer type, Seven Seas type game, you know. But that may be just me. That's again my bias, because I like, I'm a fencer, so I like musketeers and stuff like that, and I like swashbucklers. Obviously, the art doesn't really suggest that very much. It kind of gives off a He-Man vibe or whatever, or like something like that. But again, it's I really like it, despite the minor misapprehensions I may have with it. So just take a look at it. It's definitely worth it. Show it some love. Maybe we'll get a third edition that's even better, because I think the game deserves it. Personally, there are a few aspects of the game I preferred from first edition over this. But again, I'm going off on a tangent. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me just switch on the webcam here. I hope you enjoyed. And I hope you'll show this game some love. And I wish you all a good evening, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.